Hello everyone, welcome back to this week's Mathcast podcast. Today we are joined by Rhea from Year 8, who will join us to review the book called Weirder Maths. And this book is a sequel to Weird Maths, which is one that we both haven't read, but we are looking forward to reading in the future. So let's just start by giving me your overall opinion on the book, just how you enjoyed it, and maybe a rating out of 10 or something along those lines, so we just know where you're at with the book.
I really like this book. It was my kind of book. I don't concentrate much in maths books. My concentration wanes very quickly. But this one had really short, digestible chapters about wildly different subjects, and they were all really interesting. So I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10, not 9 or 10, because it wasn't very special. It was very good to read, a really fun read, but it didn't have a really interesting or special premise, not like, I don't know, Humble Pie or something, which is about maths mistakes, or Significant Figures, which is about, I think, famous mathematicians. But this one was just kind of random, so I'd give it an 8, because it was still good, but it wasn't really focused.
Yeah, I completely agree as well with your rating and your explanation, because the book was absolutely amazing. I love the book because it included so many things that are important, that are fun to know. So things like Zeno's paradox, which we previously talked about as well, that are in the book. So it's just a bunch of random but still really, really fun and entertaining topics to talk about. But the randomness could be something to throw you off, but for me personally, it was something that pulled me in more because I never knew what the next chapter was about. Whereas, for example, other books such as Fermat's Theorem, where it did give you a very step-by-step kind of way, and the whole book talks about Fermat's Theorem, which is very expected. But this book was very much talking about the weird aspect of maths hinted in the title as well.
I also really liked how it would link back to real life. So there was one chapter which was maths in art, which is explaining things like the golden rectangle, the golden ratio, and how that fits into art. I found that really interesting, and I did some further research into it, and it really helped, art really helped with bringing back infinity, because, Archimedes and some of the Greek people were they didn't like infinity, so art brought back infinity by using things like vanishing points, and I found that really interesting because it shows, sometimes maths is shown, why do I need maths? What's the point of learning how to expand brackets and stuff? But it shows how it fits into absolutely everything.
Yeah, that's a good point to mention as well. When am I ever going to need this in real life? And I feel like this book perfectly answers that question, where a lot of the times, there's this chapter I think talks about imaginary numbers and the realm of the imaginary, or something along those lines. And even though you don't directly need it in real life, no one's going to ever ask you what's the square root of -1, and you're going to have to reply with I, but it's something that even the imaginary numbers thinks that you can't even imagine, even though it's hinted in the name. It's called imaginary, but it's something that you can perfectly well use in real life, and I feel like that's something that it kind of covers well. But the one kind of downside I would say about this book is that it gives you from the surface level some information, but it doesn't really dive so deep into the information where you would understand every bit of it. And I think you mentioned that you did a bit of research on some topics in here, and I feel like when you're reading a book, something that you shouldn't really have to do is research what you're talking about, because a lot of the times just reading a book is just you sitting there just reading and just relaxing. But kind of the research bit maybe threw it off a little bit, especially for readers who aren't really experienced with any of these topics before.
Yeah, that's probably just because I was really nerdy, but I think that this book is really good to introduce people to maths. So the two people who wrote it was David Darling, who teaches science. I think he's a science professor, and he's really in his 40s, and he's really good at maths. He teaches children maths, and he's a really experienced math professor, and I really don't want to say this guy's name wrong. Agnijo Banerjee, I think, and he's a really young, in his teens, maths prodigy. So I think that combination made this book really interesting, because you could see that the older maths professor helped explain lots of the history, but the younger maths prodigy was really good at explaining the maths. So I think it's Euler's nerd points go down, Euler's equation, where it's e to the I pi equals +1 equals to 0. I never understood that, and this book explained it in a way using imaginary numbers, which I never understood. That was so clear to me, and when I read it, I literally got up and told our math teacher, you have to read this book. It made me understand Euler's equation. I'm so happy. So yeah, it was really good to read for people who aren't very good at maths or who don't know a lot about the subject, because it explained things to me that I didn't understand.
Yeah, that's a good point. It explains things really well, and the covers that are the topics that are covered are so varied, and there are so many different ones. And I really like the chapter where it talks about the mathematicians, like weird mathematicians. And I'm not sure if it mentions this, but there was that one story about Archimedes.
I think it does.
I'm not sure if it does, but there was this one chapter about this one story about Archimedes where he was he was taking a bath, and then when he was in the bath, he discovered something about the problem that he didn't know. And then he walked out naked on the streets screaming like Eureka or something similar. And not suggesting that's something you should do, but like it was really funny to discover how like these mathematicians are so engrossed in their subject, and it's something that they really love to do. And that story does kind of cover it a lot. And yeah.
I just want to talk about this chapter. I've got it open now, which was it's called Tilings, Plain, Fancy, and Downright Peculiar. I really like this chapter because tiles seem something that's like, it's not really fun. It's like tiles are on the floor in the bathroom and you don't really think about them. But this chapter linked it to like geometry, algebra, it linked it to like beehives and stuff, and how our tiles work the way they do. I never thought I'd be interested in tiles, but it talked about tiles in such an interesting way that it was one of my favourite chapters because it was just out of the ordinary. I've never seen a maths book talk about tiles before, and the way that they fit together, and it linked it to lots of cultural stuff too, was just really fascinating.
Yeah, and I feel like this is something that a lot of people say when they dive into maths topics, and especially things that like seem to be from a surface level that they don't relate. For example, I think we did a podcast about talking about music and how music links to maths, and that was one of the interesting ones as well, because something as well like what you said with the tiles, something from a surface level that seems completely unrelated to maths, and tiles is specifically more because it's just a random thing, like you just walk in and see a tile, but it's the way that it's like structured and the way that the book is structured that helps explain that so well, which is something that I also really like.
I think the main beauty of this book is that it makes maths fun, and it's like it's a real whirlwind of maths. I didn't like the shortness of the chapters and the briefness of them because I like in-depth books. But I think someone who doesn't know a lot about maths, this is the perfect book for them because it's just a whirlwind of the best of mathematics. And it really does convey how wild and how maths is like absolutely everywhere. It links everything like art, music, tiles, architecture. It shows a lot more than the surface level, and it really makes you appreciate all the numbers around you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for me personally, my rating was very similar to yours, like an 8, maybe like a 7, because I did enjoy the short chapters. Like that was something that stood out for me and gave me like extra benefits, because I feel like a lot of the times it's better like quantity over quality sometimes, because if you just know a lot of different things, sometimes you can start to link them together. So for example, if you know a lot of about a lot of different paradoxes, you can start to link them together and understand what the base of a paradox really is and how it actually works. And yeah, so thank you so much for coming, Rhea. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope to see you next time.